Hi, welcome back to my channel Skills Set Go, and welcome to the Kotlin tutorial. In this video we will learn what are constructors in Kotlin language. So you all know constructors are used to create objects of a class, and it also used to instantiate values to a member variables of the class. So here we have two types of constructors in Kotlin. One is primary constructor and one more is secondary constructor. So primary constructors are declared at class header level and secondary constructor declare using constructor keyword. So let's go to straight into the simple example. Now we are going to create a class which is having two variables, two member variables, and we are providing a way to pass values to that while creating an instance of object. So let's create a class name my class. So this is a empty class which doesn't have any member variables or any functions. So we are going to have two member variables, and we are going to provide a primary constructor which we can pass values while creating instance of the class. So it is said that declared at class header level. It means here we can directly create a primary constructor and we can declare member variables here using val or var keyword. Let's say val name, which is string, and we can use var or var age, which is int. So that's it. We have created a class which has two member variables, and we have a primary constructor which we can pass values to the member variables. So now let's try to instantiate object val object1 equal to. So now you all know how to instantiate. We don't need to use new keyword like in Java. We can directly use class name and we can provide values to the name and age. Name, let's provide channel name. Age, let's take any random age. So that's it. We have created an instance of a class, and let's try to print the values. We can directly print object1 dot name age, and let's try to execute this program. So now we have got a value skill set go and the age 23, which we have passed to the object instance while we are creating through the primary constructor. So primary constructor doesn't have any implementation code. It just have a variables and we can pass directly the values to it. It is just used to create or instantiate a member variables. So here if you observe, we have declaring a variable inside a constructor, primary constructor, and age and name. That's why we are able to access through the object instance. So if you want to create a same class in Java, we need to create these two variables inside a class body. Then we need to have a separate constructor which is taking two variables, and inside that we need to instantiate manually two variables with the two variables passed. So this is the simple way in Kotlin language. Suppose if you take out this declaration inside, so if you take out a val before name, then this name variable doesn't belong to this class. It is just an argument in a primary constructor. So here we can't access because name is not a member variable of class. So this is a primary constructor, and secondary constructor declare using constructor keyword. So in Kotlin we can have only one primary constructor and we can have any number of secondary constructors. So as you observe, primary constructor is only used for instantiating the member variables. If you want to do any extra logic before while creating an object, then that time you must need a secondary constructor. So you can have any number of secondary constructors which is declared using constructor keyword. So let's try to create a secondary constructor. So now we have two member variables, name and age. Let's create another variable, message. message hello, and we may not have value, so we need to provide late init var. So now we have three member variables of class myClass. If you use primary constructor, only these two variables will be instantiated. If you want to instantiate message also, then you need to use some other constructor, that is secondary constructor. You can use primary constructor also if you declare var message in the third argument. But in this case, we will use a secondary constructor and see the result. So we can directly use constructor keyword, and we can have three arguments, one for message and one for name and age. So we have created a secondary constructor, but we are getting some error. Let's see what is it. So primary constructor call expected. Suppose we have a secondary constructor as well as primary constructor, then we must call a primary constructor from the secondary constructor. If you don't have primary constructor, then no need to call using secondary constructor. So in this case, we must call this constructor here. You can call using colon, using this keyword, and pass two variables values to this. We can pass these two which we have taken from outside, name and age, and inside this secondary constructor we can instantiate message equal to message. So I hope you are following. So this is a primary constructor which can be used only for instantiating a member variables. If you want to do any logic while instantiating, you must use a secondary constructor, and while creating a secondary constructor, if you have primary constructor, then you must call a primary constructor from secondary constructor. And now let's instantiate an object using a secondary constructor. So this is a primary constructor. Let's pass a message also here. So now we are using a secondary constructor which has three variables. If we click, it is going here. So now if you print name age, we will get whatever we passed here, and if we print message also, we will get the message. Now let's execute and see. Now we have got name, age and the message. So these are the two types of constructors. Suppose let's say we don't have this primary constructor, and now we need to manually declare name and age inside a class body. Before we have primary constructor, we are directly instantiating there. Now we should instantiate name and age inside this manually. This is name, and here same like message, we need to instantiate name. We can use this name, this age, and as we don't have primary constructor, no need to call this. Latent modifier is not allowed on properties of primitive types. Let's remove latent. So now is the same. Here the declaration is same. The constructor we have changed. If you don't have primary constructor, then what will happen? Now let's execute the program. We will get the same results. The result is same, but the structure of constructors is changed. Let's revert back to the primary constructor. So here in this case, primary constructor, we are directly declaring a variables using val and var. You can ask a question, why, what if we use same val and var for this message also? Because name and age we are not declaring inside a body, message we are declaring. Let's say if we keep same thing for val, then we will get an error saying val on secondary constructor parameter is not allowed. So declaring a variables in secondary constructors are not allowed. It is allowed only in primary constructors. So these are the different types of constructors in Kotlin language. One is primary constructor, one is secondary constructor. We can have only one primary constructor and we can have one or more secondary constructors. If you have primary constructor and secondary constructor, then secondary constructor must call a primary constructor. If you don't have a primary constructor, then we no need to call this primary constructor. So it is not mandatory to have a primary constructor. So I hope you like this video and understood the concepts. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching.